A police interrogation revealed the horrifying truth about my wife. So, I was told by police to come down to their station, and as soon as I did, I was interrogated for hours about one of my wife's co-workers. I didn't know him, however, and finally convinced the officers of this. Well, that's when they showed me a video of my wife getting her back blown out by him. I watched it in shock, and in response to what I just saw, I started having a panic attack. The police had a paramedic check me out, and he said my blood pressure was extremely high. He wanted me to go to the hospital, but I refused, and I said I needed to find my wife and my son. After I calmed down, I demanded an explanation from the officers about why I was in here and why were they the ones letting me know of my wife's infidelity. The officers explained that the guy in the video had been having an affair with my wife and apparently several other women at the same time. Well, he had been found that morning in his driveway, badly assaulted and raped by someone. He was alive but in critical condition, and they didn't know if he would make it. His wife had given the officers permission to go through his phone and computer, and that's where they found the video of my wife. They asked me where I was that morning, and I told them the gym then worked about 10 minutes from my gym. At that point, they said I could go, but that I might not want to stay at my house because they didn't know if his affair with my wife could be why he was attacked. They also said my wife wasn't the only person he was having an affair with. That's when I rushed home. My son was staying with our neighbors, so I got him and went home. We packed some clothes and his laptop for school. I grabbed my firearm and we headed to my parents' house 45 minutes away. I called the officer who gave me his card and he said, "My wife is at the hospital with the guy she's been cheating with." I spent the next little while drinking while everyone else slept and quietly sobbing. My wife was the woman I gave everything to. I loved her so much. Words can't describe. She was the greatest woman I could have ever asked for, and I did everything I could do to be her perfect life partner. Anyway, in the morning on No Sleep, I did some investigation of my own, and I found out that the officer I spoke with about my wife's location was lying through his teeth. It turns out my wife wasn't at the hospital with her lover. I found this out when I contacted our family detective. Turns out she had been admitted to that hospital's psychiatric facility much earlier in the day while he was still in surgery. I don't know why they would lie about that, but they did. Needless to say, this situation has caused me to become very suspicious of law enforcement. Anyway, after I woke up that afternoon, I contacted my uncle's law partner, who is a family friend. He actually came to my parents' house and sat down with me to go over my options. His entire law firm is now representing me both in the divorce and criminal defense. That day, he got me an emergency custody order and a protective order against my wife for me, my son, and my parents. Our court date was scheduled in 60 days. The police served her the day after as she was leaving the psych hospital. She is staying with her parents for the time being. I hadn't talked to her yet, and she has not tried to reach out to me either. That is something that hurt me more than I expected it to. The fact she cared so little for me or for what we had that she didn't even bother to call. Not even an apology, a mention of what she did, a word of goodbye, or even a plea that it was a dumb mistake. Almost like she didn't even care enough. I had to tell my son something, so I decided to tell him the truth. And literally, the first words out of his mouth was, "Please don't let mommy take me away." I asked him why he would say that, and his words broke my heart from what he told me. My wife has been treating him poorly when I wasn't around, and told him that if he told me, she would take him away, and my son would never see me again. She has been emotionally manipulating our son, and I was too blind to see it. That wrecked me more than the video, to be honest. I told the lawyer about what my son said, and he used my son's statement and her mental state and commitment to get the emergency custody. I have contacted his school for therapy resources, and he will start therapy after the first of the year. I feel like the worst father to ever walk the face of the earth at this point. As for our families, her parents contacted me and asked to come see us. I was still at my parents' at the time, and I told them they could come. She was not allowed anywhere near us. They agreed. They were so apologetic, and her poor mother didn't stop crying the entire time she was with us. Her father was heartbroken and kept referring to my wife as that girl. They both said they felt like something was going on with her, and they did not raise her to be this way. We hugged and cried before they left, and I told them they will always be a part of our lives no matter what happens with the divorce. After what my son told me, their visit was the hardest part of our whole ordeal. My lawyers did some amazing work. They found out that the man my wife was sleeping with has a long criminal record. One of the lawyers informed me that when they went to print out the guy's arrest record, the printer ran for 5 minutes straight from what they could learn. He is currently on parole for substance offenses and has had gang affiliations in the past. The firm has an investigator who contacted the co-worker who drove my wife to the hospital. The co-worker informed them that my wife's affair was an open secret around the office. My lawyers think that's how the police figured out who I was and who my wife was. In the video, there are several photos of last year's Christmas party at her work, and my wife and I are in several of them, so it took some time. But my son started therapy recently, and the difference is already noticeable. I asked him if he felt comfortable with me talking to his therapist, and he said yes. So I've had a few discussions with her about it all. According to the therapist, my soon-to-be ex-wife would emotionally blackmail him whenever they were alone together. He was not allowed to make noise or bother her in any way. When he was home, she would leave him alone for hours on end, and even overnight if I was out of town, she would then threaten him with being taken away and never see me again, if he told me or anyone else, the therapist said. This has made him feel powerless and dependent during a time in his development that she should actually be feeling empowered and self-reliant. The thing is, my son is 16, but he is autistic and not very emotionally aware. So what I've been doing is teaching him situational awareness, telling him to pay attention to street names and how to read addresses on buildings. As for myself, it also took a lot of time, but I began feeling a lot better. I started therapy around the same time as my son, and although I don't speak to my therapist as much as he does, it has helped to be able to talk through my thoughts and feelings about everything that has happened to us and our family. The numbness is gone, but it was replaced by a white-hot ball of anger in the pit of my stomach whenever I think of my ex-wife and what she's put our family through. Funny enough, although I hate feeling angry, it's a lot easier to deal with than the numbness. And for my legal situation, it escalated greatly and very much favorably. I was awarded temporary full custody and child support, which I didn't want, but my lawyer pretty much demanded we ask for, as well as a continuation of the order of protection for myself and my son at the request for an order hearing, which neither my wife nor her lawyer showed up to. The judge asked if we would allow supervised visitation, but my son absolutely refused, which was why my lawyer told me to bring him along. The judge asked my son if he would speak to him alone, and he agreed. The judge, stenographer, and the child welfare officer went into chambers with my son and met for about 10 minutes. After their meeting, the judge granted the temp orders and ordered therapy and psychological evaluation for my son. Luckily, the therapist he is seeing is somehow involved with or accredited to work with the courts, so he doesn't have to see another therapist. My lawyer said this is a good thing because it means his therapist can give a recommendation for custody, but it still scares the hell out of me that she could get some form of custody after what she put him through. As for the affair partner, I don't know much from what my lawyers have gathered. He's alive, but still in the hospital. I haven't heard from the police since my initial interview, so nothing new to report there. As for my ex-wife, things were weird. I still hadn't seen her since the day I was questioned. Granted, she has attempted to call me a few times, but I haven't answered. And when she called from another number, I hung up immediately. I have nothing to say to her, and I don't want to hear anything she has to say to me. Her lawyer requested a preliminary hearing for our court-appointed mediation. She was served the second week of January. She was there with her lawyer, and I know this will sound petty, but she looked terrible. She was always an attractive and athletic woman. I swear, in our wedding photos, she looks like a supermodel. But now, well, she's lost so much weight, it's disturbing. She looks sick and frail. She didn't even look at me. She just sat with her face down through most of the meeting. Long story short, everything they asked for was ridiculous. They wanted visitation during the divorce proceedings and shared custody after. They want us to drop the ops. She wants to cohabitate until the divorce is finalized. I'm not joking. After all this, she wants to live in the same house. It was so insulting that my head throbbed through the whole meeting, but it was all worth it for the big reveal we gave to her lawyer. Her lawyer asked how we should handle discovery for the division of assets, to which my lawyer got this shocked look on his face and said, "What? Division of assets?" Read the prenup. The look on her lawyer's face was priceless. She hadn't told her lawyer about the prenup. My late uncle, who was the founding partner of the law firm I use, wrote that prenup and actually hired her a lawyer to look over it for her before we married. According to my lawyer, it's a thing of beauty because we never mix finances. Per my uncle's instructions, the house we live in was a gift to me from my uncle before we married. All the utilities and insurances are in my name. All the vehicles are registered in the owner's name only, and we never had to sign any debt for each other. We have one shared savings account that is used for household maintenance and an emergency fund. It has around $8,000 in it, which she has already drained. There is less than $300 in it now. The prenup states that all marital assets and debt are to be divided 50-50, and ownership of all intangible assets and personal debt reverts back to the individual who accrued it. The adultery clause simply states that we agreed that if either party is caught or admits to committing adultery, they lose the right to claim any form of spousal support. But the last thing her lawyer asked for was what has really messed with me. He asked that we postpone the official mediation for 6 months while my ex-wife attends an inpatient rehabilitation facility for substance abuse. When he said that, I couldn't even fathom the possibility of my wife actually having a problem with substances. I talked to my lawyer and he said that we would discuss it and get back with them about our decision on that. Before we left, my ex-wife spoke literally for the first time and asked me to read a letter she had written to me. My lawyer gave me the "this could be a snake, so be careful" look. book, and I debated with myself for a moment but decided to take it. When I got home, I read it, and now I wish I hadn't. It started off with all those busted cheater platitudes. I love you, I love our family, I know I mistreated our son, and I hate myself for it. I want us again. But what was the most shocking part was her explaining that after a major surgery she had about 2 years ago, she started abusing her medication. After a while, she started buying them from some of the people she worked with, including her affair partner. He became her go-to guy, and when she ran out of money, she started sleeping with him to make up the difference. She said she hid this from me because she was afraid I would make her stop, and she couldn't feel right without them anymore, that he meant nothing to her but a fix, and she hates herself for doing what she's done, both to herself and to us. Now she says she understands how awful what she's done is and wants to get better for our family, and asks me to at least give her some time to prove she wants this.